So I have something to tell you. It's a little crazy. Today we are going to be doing a get ready with me while I do a story time. This is my first actual story time. I feel like I haven't had stories to tell. Also, one of my neighbors is leaf blowing right now, even though there are no leaves to be blown. They just wanted to be annoying and there's not a lot I can do about it. I tried to wait them out, but they are really passionate about whatever it is that they are leaf blowing. So I unfortunately can't stop them. I want to film a video after this, so I need to do my makeup for that essentially. Starting off with my SPF because I'm not crazy. Everyone cares about SPF these days. You all know probably that I went to Europe. That's all I have posted for the past 2 months was Europe vlogs. So this whole story actually revolves around our flight home. And I obviously live very far away from Europe. I live in Canada. It was actually really hard and a long journey to get home. The flights are very difficult to get out of Lisbon. We really wanted to fly into Lisbon potentially. There was nothing direct home. So we actually got super lucky with our flights because they were super cheap. So it was about $900 for me, $900 for my boyfriend, to do 3 flights, so flying from Vancouver all the way to England and then from Lisbon to Montreal and Montreal to Vancouver. There was a 7-hour layover in between the Montreal and the Vancouver flight. Honestly, I know that there's worse layovers, but trust and believe, both the flights were extremely long. They weren't short little flights. It was 7 hours and it was a 5-hour flight. And we were leaving Lisbon at 8 a.m. You need to understand that when this story went down, we were already extremely exhausted. The travel day ended up being over 24 hours. We had experienced so many issues. Left our hotel at 8 a.m. from Lisbon. We took an Uber to the airport. We got through the airport. We were sitting and we were waiting a long time because the previous flight hadn't taken off from our gate. I have never taken a bus to the airplane before, but apparently the airline we were flying on, which was my flagship airline, I don't know if I want to say their name, you'll figure it out, but I don't want them to come for me. So that airline, they obviously didn't have a great gate situation at the Lisbon airport. I had no problems with the Lisbon airport, and the bus itself wasn't awful. It was just, we were already starting different, you know what I'm saying? We were all fighting for our lives, to get on there. And you know what? The great equalizer in an airport is the bus, because it didn't matter if you were at the front of the line, you were getting on the same bus, okay? So it was kind of a fight up the stairs. Honestly, I was so tired that morning. I just looked at Eli and I was like, we're not fighting to get up here. I'm sure it will be fine. The flight itself was actually pretty good. The international flights on this airline were pretty good. They feed you really good. The problems only came when we flew domestic. We actually really wanted to go into Montreal City. So when we were coming into land, we were planning what buses we were taking and kind of what activities we wanted to do. So the thing about the connections in Montreal, they had a separate lane. Immediately when you got off the plane, there was here is where you go for connections. That line was empty. Great. The other line was, the regular line, and we would have to go through that if we wanted to go into Montreal. And we had a 7-hour layover, so we were yep, this will be fine, this will be great. That line you couldn't see the end of, and we decided, okay, we'll wait it out, we'll see if it moves. After standing in the line for 20 minutes, we still hadn't moved. Me and Eli kind of decided hey, we live in this country, so if we really want to go to Montreal, it's possible, but maybe now is not the time. But we decided to go through the connections line, which was actually really great. It was super fast. I feel bad for everyone who's still probably in that line right now. So this is where things take a turn for the worse. We haven't gotten to the worst part, but things are starting to happen. So in this layover, me and Eli started out great and we just decided to sit down. I started to fall asleep and I realized that I didn't want to fall asleep because the time zone difference was going to be big jump. It was going to be about 8 hours and I really wanted to adjust as best as I could. And I knew that when we landed in Vancouver, it would be nighttime in Vancouver. and I could fall asleep then, you know? So I didn't want to fall asleep in the middle of the afternoon. I was like, okay, let's go for a walk. Let's walk around. Let's get some food. We just need to keep moving. So we got like some ice caps. I made a cute little story about being back in Canada, and we walked around a bit. At the gate that we were sitting at, there were, I think, 3 flights that left before our flight, and one of those flights was going to Vancouver. I think 2 of them maybe, actually, and I have no idea why this airline did not book us on to that one instead, because that would have been amazing and we could have gotten home much sooner. So I honestly can't even remember. Oh yes, our plane was delayed. I think they all were, but I was really stressed out because this flight was supposed to be super turbulent and we were going through a lot of storms. And I am not a great traveler when it comes to airplanes. It's less like flight, like anxiety. It's more like everything else that comes with the plane experience. But, you know, I obviously don't love turbulence, but I really wanted to make sure that getting on the plane was super, super smooth for me and my boyfriend. And so I was like, we are lining up straight away. We are going to be the first people in line. We're going to be those annoying people. We hadn't been up until this point, and maybe that's what cursed us, but we decided, okay, front of the line. We are getting up there and it's going to be amazing. And so literally we are having to stand up there for such a long time, and the way that the lineups were set up was like unclear. So there was potentially 2 lines for our zone. We were in zone 5, so we were like the peasants. So we decided to stand in separate spots where we would both technically be the front of the line, but it was like slightly staggered. So like I was behind Eli, and we're finally about to board. And, you know, zone 1 goes, zone 2 goes. It is finally our, like, section, but not our zones, time to board the plane. Amazing. And then I get a notification on my phone. And it says, and I'm holding both of our boarding passes, and it says, Eli's seat has changed. Excuse me, ma'am, no. We had paid ahead of time. Like, we didn't do the seat selection at the 24-hour mark at the check-in. We did the seat selection a month in advance, so that we could sit beside each other. So we had a window seat and a middle seat. My seat on that flight was $75. Okay, Eli's seat was $45. So it wasn't just a nothing, and I was already super stressed out for this flight and getting on. You know, one of the biggest struggles is baggage, and so far up until this point, you know, Eli's been kind of like handling that for me. He's been great. I start freaking out. He's fine. He's annoyed, but he's fine. I like ask him, I'm like, you gotta speak to one of them, because like there's no way. And mind you, when I had been checking, because I'd been stalking to see if our flight was going to be full, so I was seeing if people were selecting their seats, and only 10% of the plane was full up until the 24-hour check-in. So 90% of the plane had not selected their seats ahead of time, and they were just going to get their assigned seats. And so we were one of the few people who actually booked a seat ahead of time. And so I was indeed freaking out a little bit, because they had actually moved Eli to a middle seat in between 2 random people at the back of the plane, and I was just in front of the wing. So we were opposite ends of the plane, and he was actually on the other side of the aisle as well. Like, he just as far away as he could get, that's where he was. And we had organized all of our like baggage so that we had like an airport bag that was like shared, that had like our drinks, that had our snacks, that had like our entertainment, our charging, everything, and that was going to be his carry-on. So I had nothing, because that's where I was bringing on my toiletries, how I was bringing on some of my souvenirs in my backpack. So I had given him like some of my stuff for the airplane. You know, we wouldn't have had time to swap anything over because we were boarding the plane. And so Eli goes up to these people and he's like, please, can we like speak to someone? Can we like possibly like not get the seat changed? It was changed at the last second. And Eli just gets a card thrown in his face saying, here, contact this if, you know, you paid for it. There's a refund in process already. And he was like really trying to talk to people. He talked to another person and they were like, "Sir, we are boarding the plane. You need to go back." It was just so crazy. I literally started crying because I was just freaking out. We had just like had the worst day getting there. And so our emotions like were higher, and I can acknowledge that there was no need to be crying about it. But it still wasn't an amazing, you know, experience. We get zone 3 to board and they're boarding zone 4. So it's still not technically our time to board. But because we're standing at the front of the line in our section, like we're letting people go. And the lady who's been overhearing all of these conversations waves me over and I'm like, no, zone 5. Like, I'm letting these other people go. Like, I'll be front of the line for zone 5, but like, I'm not part of this. She was like, no, just come. She's like, it's the least I could do. I was the one who switched your seat. I was like, oh, awesome. Hey, can we not be switched seats? Like, you can move me, but it's just really important that we sit together on this like plane. Like, that's what we paid for. We didn't pay for a middle seat and a window seat. Like, we paid because we wanted to sit together. Like, it was just so, can we just sit together? No, nothing we can do. It was a child, which I understand. I think this kid was like 7 and they needed to sit with their parents. However, one thing about this airline is that if you have a child who you have to sit with, you get to pick your seat for free ahead of time. And so this parent just needed a little more forethought to not mess us up. But really, honestly, the airline should have swapped someone who didn't pay for their seat in advance. I didn't think that was very fair, but nonetheless, we got on the plane. I'm freaking out. We were throwing stuff at each other, asking Eli if he could like lift my luggage up, whatever. And obviously they let the families board first. So that kid and that parent were already sitting there, and I like wanted to make sure I didn't look like I was crying. I get it, like it might be hard to be traveling with kids. I was trying not to like make it a big deal in front of them. I just had to stare at the window because I was like, my face like looked not well. This kid was with his dad and they had, turns out, bought the premium package in terms of food, which is really expensive, and it was a 5-hour flight where they weren't gonna serve us anything. And so I understand why that like totally makes sense. They bought like the dinner package, they bought like some burgers. Not that the kid ate the burger. It just went to show me that they went out of their way to do that, and they definitely had the means anyways to be paying for seat selection. So they got like the drinks and all the snacks and everything. The kid was the one sitting in the middle, I was in the window, and the dad was in the aisle. It turns out this kid was really sick. And so the dad was asking him to like keep his mask on and all kinds of stuff, which is fine, except this kid had decided to use me as like a body pillow and start like leaning on me and stuff. And the person in front of me had decided to completely recline their seat back, and they were going to be falling asleep the entire flight. And so I literally was so cramped and I just started panicking. Like, the plane hasn't even taken off yet. Knew that the plane was gonna be bad. I had like a bad feeling going onto the plane, and I just felt like, oh my God, like freaking out. Like, should I not be on this flight? Was I not meant to be on this flight? Is something bad gonna happen on this flight? I feel like things are trying to like push me off of this flight. Like, this is just starting so bad. It's the last flight of the day. It's 5 hours. I thought I was going to be with Eli and we were just going to fall asleep, and I wasn't comfortable falling asleep with these people. I didn't think they were going to steal it. I feel vulnerable when I'm sleeping. I had barely eaten, and I was like hoping to eat food on the plane, and the only thing that Eli was able to pass to me was this little package of cookies, which I ate. But it was gonna be 5 hours where I was going to be hungry, and I didn't have Eli. I couldn't text him because we didn't pay for that freaking Wi-Fi. So Rogers did end up sponsoring the flight, and so that did mean that if you were like a premium member, which Eli is, you could get free text only. And so I ended up punching in his seat and his information, and I was able to text my mom. So that was really nice, and she did not enjoy the situation. I told her about it. She immediately called some Air Canada representatives on that like phone line. They were so rude and not helpful, and so we didn't really get anywhere with that, and that was not great. Once the flight takes off, I put on something I downloaded from Netflix. I curl up kind of next to the window and like I'm just looking out, and it was actually like really beautiful at nighttime, and we've taken off and I've started to like relax a little bit. If they were passing out alcohol on that flight, you best believe I would have had some. I was pretty much ended up for majority of the time like raw dogging the flight, like just looking at the flight map and just like kind of going on my phone. Not that there was anything to do on there, but I just like felt so uncomfortable. This kid was like leaning on me and coughing, and they got their food, and I was like starving, and the kid didn't even like eat it, and they were just like talking the whole time, and this was like a night flight. I'm more upset at the airline than these people, but these people weren't helping. Okay, so we are in the air, and we definitely ran into some storms. It was an extremely turbulent flight. Okay, so I just did my eyeliner off camera really quick because I need to like zoom in. So yeah, the flight was really turbulent. We were heading through a ton of storms. The seatbelt sign was pretty much on for the entire flight. It went off a couple times for like 5 minutes, but then it'd be back on. There was one time where I literally started dozing off and got jolted out of my sleep because it just started getting really crazy. Eli says that that was the worst turbulence he's ever experienced, and I would agree. He didn't have any armrests or anything for the people in between, so he was like shaking in between these two people. We just had the most turbulence we personally have ever experienced, and it was just so scary because I had already felt like this flight, like I just felt such bad vibes around it that I just like was so scared. And I like was texting my mom about it, and I was like, oh, it's like really turbulent, help. And like, you know, she also knew that there was like gonna be storms that we were traveling through, and so it was like good to like finally, you know, be able to like text her with this like free text. It sounds like I'm gonna start advertising for Rogers now, but they just happen to be doing that. Well, I tried to text Eli because I was like, oh, he also can use it, right? So it turns out Eli just didn't even bother connecting to it, and so we didn't talk the whole flight. I was like sending him lots of messages about like the turbulence or about the situation. He actually sent me like a final text, like if this is low-key the last time we speak. Like it was just, I don't know why everyone was acting like that plane was going down. I think he knew he was going ghost mode, and at least I kind of knew, but he did not connect, and I did try and contact him, but there was no way for me to like check in on him. Like I was like trying to talk to him. He hadn't connected, so I was very much like didn't know what was going on, and he was like just in the same plane, and it was kind of like weird. Eventually 5 hours does go by. The last 1 hour was so unbelievably painful because I was simply just staring at the flight map screen because I couldn't bring myself to do anything else. And also like I downloaded some stand-up comedy. I felt weird with the dude being on the screen next to this child. I don't know, he wasn't like a bad dude. No, he does some hand motions. I don't know, okay? He's not even bad. After this terrifying turbulent flight, and we are finally here, and I decided, hey, I'm going to wait for Eli until I see him because then I will get off the plane, right? Because I was like, in my head, I just really want to like see his face and like see that he survived. So these two beside me like race out of there. We haven't said one word to each other, and I'm like, okay, peace out, bye. But Eli is so far in the back of the plane. I'm trying to not make it super obvious that I'm like standing up, so I try and go to the side, but every single person who passes me is like, oh, you can go. And I'm like, no, I'm waiting for my boyfriend, and people keep going. But people keep asking, and eventually Eli's like not getting off this plane, and I feel like the pressure of, you know, flight attendants and like other people to like just get off the plane. And so eventually I just like grab my suitcase and I just like get off, and I text Eli that I got off the plane. And I wait for Eli off of the plane, and then I remember he's literally the last 5 people to get off the plane. And I was so excited to see him, but we were just so dead. Us reuniting was like no reaction. It was like, hey, are you okay? And it was like, no. Are you okay? Not really. We both also had to pee so bad. I had to like use the bathroom so badly on the plane that I felt horrible asking this like kid who had fallen asleep to like get up and move. So we landed like midnight and we like raced to the bathroom. My mom meets us at the airport and we're finally able to reunite after 3 weeks, which was definitely so nice. And I just like needed to talk about the plane ride. And I even feel like now I'm forgetting stuff that happened, but like it was just horrible. And also since then, we've tried multiple ways to connect to the airline to not only get a refund, but also an apology. And as well, like they were only going to refund Eli's seat because technically I got the seat that I had picked. We recently, because we sent lots of messages, Eli, you know, was sending like big long like explanations onto like why it was about like us sitting together and not about getting a window seat and a middle seat. Like he didn't pay to have a middle seat. Eventually we did both get refunded. It has taken a long time. This flight happened like a month. And it was just like not good. It was just so bad. I wouldn't recommend. Airline, you know, it did have like a rap of being not great on customer service, which definitely turned out to be true, but it was so disappointing because both of our international flights on this airline were spectacular. And if you were going on an international flight with this airline, I would totally recommend it, support it, have good words to say. However, the domestic flights felt like we were a cargo ship and we were all just trash. And it was horrible. But the international flights they felt very nice and luxury, and like they served us great food. And I felt super comfortable. We got so much water, food, and even like the service was really great, but just those domestic flights, not it. And so that's the thing. I was so disappointed that it had to end like that, and I didn't want to hate this airline, but I don't know if it would be my first choice to fly with them again. And it was just so difficult and took so many phone calls and emails and conversations in order to get someone to actually like listen to our request for a refund or even just a conversation. We never did get like any apology or anything. We just got like the money and like a peace out. It's such a special treat for like me and Eli to like have done that. We spent like a lot of money on the whole like trip, and it was gonna be like his first international flight experience, and like that was who we chose to go with. And I just wish that it was handled better. For me, I was already terrified to fly. I would never fly by myself because I have so many like fears in the airport and like with the plane and stuff. And so it was really important that Eli was going to be there to help me be like calm. And also, you know, if something bad happened, like he was the person on that plane, I think he would know what to do specifically with me better than other people. Someone fainted on the flight and the flight attendants didn't even come. They were smashing the like help button a bunch, and the the flight attendants took like 10 minutes to finally get there, and they carried him to like the back room, and no one ever saw him again for the rest of the flight. But he had like passed out fully like in the aisle like during the turbulence, and because it was turbulent, maybe that's why it took so long. But no response to the help button at all. And just that's all I gotta say on that. And I hate that I like had to make this video, but I also had fun sharing this story. And there's definitely so much that I'm forgetting about what happened, but this is the makeup. Let me just put you on the window. Oh, I should have been doing it here the whole time. So this is the makeup. And so I gotta film another video now that I'm really excited about, but overall Europe was amazing. The flights weren't. So thank you so much for hanging out with me, and hopefully I will see you in another vlog very soon. Love ya, bye.